Hi guys, and I would like to first congratulate you on reaching this so far, and hopefully my content is easy to understand. I try to make it as simple as possible that even with a person who has no background in Excel or no background in financial modeling is able to do these exercises, right? And now we've reached into a very interesting function, which I suppose as an entrepreneur or as a product manager or as a researcher or as an investor have found this function to be very I would say feature, not function, to be very useful, right? Because it just your presentations are quick, right? You don't have to uh, wait to just align things in a certain manner, and you can just present your analysis very quickly, right? So I'm going to take this a little slow so that you basically understand how this thing works, right? Instead of just solving this exercise, I want you to focus on and also try to think about and just imagine the number of things possibly you could do with this function, right? And although people think that they know pivot table, but there are a lot of other functionalities of pivot table that people are not aware. Okay, now what is pivot? Pivot is a tool by which uh, manually, if you had to infer something from this table, right? So this table, if you just have a quick look on this data, right, as if you have opened the template at your end, just look at this data properly and think about things which you could actually analyze. All right, so you've got the years on the A column, right? So you've got various years, you've got various cities on the second column, and you've got in the C column you've got different products which have been sold. uh, in the D column you can see the number of units which have been sold for that particular product, right? In a particular city in a particular year, and the turnover, which is basically the entire value of sales which has been made, right, in terms of a currency, right? Now you could have multiple questions that you would like to answer, right? If you were an analyst or you were a manager, you could first of all develop questions which you would like to analyze, right? So let's try to think about what are the questions which could answer, right? We could see the product performance, right, across years, right? Since mostly you will try to look at things in two dimensions, because if you see, performance means the volume or the turnover, and year is the second dimension, right? So if you talk about, if I have to just type in the first and the second dimension, right? My first could be the value of sales that I make, and the second is year, right? So that's the second dimension. You could answer this question, right? Second is, you could also answer city performance, right? City sales versus let's say years, right? You could try to answer that. So the first is city dimension, the second is the years, right? Think about a third option which you could have actually looked. You could also look at product wise, right? Product wise, now you're talking about specific product, okay? Product wise, let's say city performance. So you're obviously now you might say that the first dimension is product wise city, and the second dimension is the value. It not really necessary. You could also keep product as the non-dimension, and you could just talk about only one product. So you might say that, okay, I just want to look at answering machine sales across city and let's say years, right? Fourth could be, let's say you're talking about years, right? Or you might say geography wise product performance, right? Or you might just skip that and say this geography wise sales turnover instead, right? And you could have city on one side and you could have sales turnover as the other dimension. So basically what I'm trying to say is that you could answer n number of questions which you want to analyze. So there's no right or wrong in a pivot table. It just means that what do you want to see or what do you want to analyze, right? So let's say we start with the first option, okay? And I'll just give you an overview also what this first, second and third dimension mean. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select, you just press shift right arrow keys to select the turnover and then press control shift and down to select the entire data. You go to the insert ribbon and select on pivot table. Right now I'll just give you a quick overview that you've got pivot table out here, and then if you go to the chart section, you've also got the pivot chart and table. Okay, so you could also make a pivot table with a byproduct chart which gets made automatically. All right, but right now we'll stick to pivot table. All right, and now you've got two options. Either you want to open up in the same sheet, which I usually don't prefer because it tends to become very messed up. So I always try to prefer a new worksheet. Okay, and let's say we opened up a new worksheet, right? And let's try to first understand what we see out here, right? So the thing that you see on the right hand side is your field list. Okay, what is field list? It's nothing but what is mentioned in your data, right? So because your data comprises of columns, your data comprises of rows, right? And you could also filter your data basis sum of your column. All right, so what pivot does is takes your data which has year, city, item, unit sold and turnover as the columns and just presents to you on the right hand side. So if you see here, these are the various fields that are available on your Excel data, right? Now below the four boxes that you see is just rearrangement of the data. Okay, which means that I could put year into rows, I could put years into columns, or I could filter basis a year. Okay, so three basic arrangement of data. One is to either put it in years into filter and filter the entire data so that I only see a specific data, right? For example, if I want to only focus on a particular year, then I would select a specific year like 1995, right? Now what has happened is this entire pivot table that we will eventually make will only be comprised of 1995 data. So it will not have anything related to 1994 or any other year, right? So that is filter. Now let's say I want to see item to be seen, right? So the product, right? So there you go. Now it's my choice whether I would like to keep the items a list on rows or columns. Okay, now the choice is decided basis which list is more lengthier. Okay, so the lengthier list I would try to keep it in rows because it's much more aesthetically easy to understand. So and city, let's say I put city in column, right? Now you have to see out here that is this the kind of representation that is okay with you, or would you want to put city in rows and item in column? It's absolutely your choice, right? Now this looks more aesthetically easier because the longer list is on the row and the shorter list is on the column, right? But be aware that you have filtered basis 1995. Okay, so if there was a certain product which was not sold in 1995, so that column will not appear here. Okay, now since you have arranged your data, right, the blank space is for the calculation, right? Now you have to tell Excel in this box out here what is that calculation that you want to do, right? So if I want to, let's say, only add up all the amount of units which have been sold, so basically I want the summation of it happening, right? It's not necessary that only you just can add up. You can also count, right? You can also average depending upon what your objective is, right? So let's say I just want to add up all this units which have been sold, right? So I will just drag that unit sold into sum of values, right? And now you can see out here that in Bangalore in year 1995, the amount of answering machine which was sold is about 1100, right? And similarly, Chandigarh, there was no product which was sold, no answering machine was sold, but only telephone was sold, right, for Chandigarh, right? Now, Chandigarh would have not appeared itself if Chandigarh would have done any sales at all, right? So that wouldn't have appeared, the city wouldn't have appeared at all. Okay, so you have to just remember that. Now, you can see all the other cities, right? So what this data is showing us is that you have basically filtered the data for 1995. Now, I could also do it the other way around, right? So I'm right now just explaining you what is pivot table. I'm not really getting into the question which we were solving, right? Now, let's say I don't want to filter across basis years. Okay, I want to see the entire data, right? So what you do is just put that back, and now you've got absolutely no filters, and just make sure that I just did a mistake out here. Make sure to select that again, okay? And now what you can do is just put the year back, all right? So now you've got all the years data available here. Okay, it's not restricted across a particular year, right? And you can clearly see Chandigarh's data is now populated, right? So what I'm trying to say is the functionality of these 3-4 sections out here. Okay, filters, columns, rows, and values. All right. You could also change the functionalities by clicking out here. Okay, they can see an arrow key out here, and select the value field settings. And if instead of adding up, you want to average, let's say, so you can just press OK, and now you will get the average of your values, right? There you go. So not limited to just summation, you can change into counting, you can do a max, you can do a minimum, you can do standard deviation, right, which we will be covering in the statistics part, right? So it depends upon what your objective is. All right, so that was a bit of just an explanation of how pivot works. And now what we can do is, since we want to come back to the basic view, you take all of these from the sections, the field list, and put it back, and the pivot is now empty. All right, now let's try to understand, use some analysis questions and see how it can be done. So we want to see product performance across years, right? Across years. That means we definitely want years, right? Now what we can do is we can just take years and put it into rows, right? There you go. So since it's just 1904 and 95, so we can try to keep it in columns so that, you know, the longer version, longer data can come in the row, right? Now product performance across years. So now we need product, right? So let's go and select product. What is my product? My item. Let's put it in rows. There you go. So I've got my 3 products. I've got years. Wonderful. Now we want to do what? We want to see performance, right? So performance is what? Performance is either unit sold or turnover. So it's up to me whether I want to see just the volume or I want to see the revenue. So if I just want to see the volume, I'll just take unit sold and put in sum of values, right? And there you go. My calculation is automatically done, right? If I wanted to instead look at sales revenue, right, I would just select turnover and put it in sum of values, right? So the first question can be analyzed in this way, right? So it's easier. Imagine if you had to do this manually, you would have to actually, you know, copy the data into a different sheet, right? It takes a lot of time. So pivot is just simplifying things for you, all right? Let's say city sales versus years. Okay, so you want to see only city sales across years, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to get the year to the row column, okay, and we just want to see city wise sales. Okay, so we don't want anything else. So let's take the city into row, and we just want to see the volume. So let's take the volume, okay, and city wise sales. Okay, nothing really fancy. Okay, we want years, so we can put years as well, not a problem. We can put the year into column. All right, there you go. You could also, if you want to just change the orientation, you can get the year to city and you can get the city to column. There you go. Okay, however you feel aesthetically is easier to understand, right? So I generally like to see this way. Okay, so the longer data is in the row and the shorter data is in the column. So it's very clear to identify, okay, in 1994, Ahmedabad did 6,200, okay, and till date it has done 6,200. So very easy to analyze, right? Let's go to the next question. Product wise city performance. Okay, now you're talking about specific product. Okay, so what if in the same question I say the same data, but I would like to see it for a particular product. Now, for a particular product, right? So I'm talking about item, right? Now I don't want to do this. I mean, this just makes it very ugly, right? Neither this, because this also makes it very ugly. So rather, just let's put this into a filter option and just look at a particular data. So let's say just look at answering machine data, right? So just select answering machine and press OK. Now whatever data you see out here is only related to answering machine, right? Now you could also say that, okay, let me select telephone. Let's only look at telephone. So now we only see telephone sales data, right? Now you might say that that's actually a problem, because we have to again and again select telephone and answering machine again and again. So what is an alternative? So there is an alternative. In fact, for the user of the data, you can actually try to simplify this by using something called as the slicer. Okay, now so we're gonna just put item back out here, right? And make sure that we remove the filters, because otherwise we will just be looking at telephone data. Okay, press OK. So we have got all the data available, right? Now I would like the user of the pivot to have the option to select which product they want to see the data on, right? So what I'll do is I'll insert something called as a slicer. So you just have to come to the pivot table analyze ribbon and just click on insert slicer, right? Now what I'm going to do is, since I want to give the opportunity to the user of the model to only look at a particular product, so let's put up a slicer for item, right? That's the product, and press OK. Now what I've done is I've given a nice dashboard out here. Okay, now the user of the model can do just one thing, is to select answering machine. Let's say, there you go. If he wants to see mobile phone, he can just select mobile phone. If he wants to select telephone, he can just select telephone, right? Now also what you could do is you could add a chart functionality to this, right? So that's where I was telling you, go to insert, okay, and if you see out here there's a pivot chart option, right? Pivot chart and pivot table, right? So while you were doing selecting the data and creating a pivot table, and if you had selected pivot chart and table, you would have had got the extra advantage of actually creating a table with a chart. Okay, so let's quickly do that. Okay, and then we can you will see why I'm saying this is such a useful functionality. So let's me press insert and pivot chart and table. All right, there you go. So same thing, just don't get bothered by what you see out here. Now what did you want? You wanted city on the category out here, and you wanted the unit sold to be on the you wanted the year to be on the legend series, right? There you go. And you wanted the unit sold to be calculated sum of values, right? This is what exactly you did. It's just the same thing which you did in a normal pivot, right? Now what I want to do is I want to give the user of the model a functionality by which he is able to select a specific product. So let me put the slicer out here for a product, right? There you go. Now what I'm doing is I'm giving the user of the model a dynamic option of analyzing data, right? So I could just rearrange this a little bit to make it more aesthetically pleasing, right? There you go. Now you can just tell the user of the model to, okay, if you want to select mobile phone, just select mobile phone, and the chart will also change automatically. There you go, right? You could also select telephone. You could also select answering machine. So that's a dynamic pivot table. Very useful for presentation, right? So I'm going to leave you with that. I explained to you the entire pivot table functionality with pivot chart, and hopefully the exercise which I give you after this, you're able to do it right. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you again in the next lecture.